You wake up in chains. Not metaphorically. Not like your job or your crippling sense of existential dread. No, we're talking actual cold, clanking iron shackles, cutting into your wrists with all the tenderness of a Roman tax collector on bonus day. You're not in a bed. Beds are for senators and people whose faces haven't been introduced to brick walls. You're on a stone floor, covered in straw, sweat, and the collective regret of 30 other men who've also just been drafted into the worst fitness program in history, Gladiator School. That's right. You didn't get a letter. You got kidnapped, auctioned, or conquered. Rome wasn't picky. Maybe you were a rebellious Gaul, caught fighting for your homeland like a fool. Maybe you were a runaway slave who thought freedom was something other than an execution waiting to happen. Or maybe you were just a poor Roman citizen who owed the wrong people money and now gets to work it off by stabbing strangers in front of 50,000 drunk fans. Welcome to the Ludus, where every day is leg day, and every week might be your last. The man yelling at you in Latin like you should understand it is your lanista, part coach, part prison warden, part emotionally abusive stepdad. He owns you. Not just legally, but completely. He decides when you eat, when you sleep, when you fight, and when you get to die for entertainment. You're led into the yard. It's not a training ground so much as an open-air torture pit. There's sand, because of course there's sand. Not just for grip and cleanup. No, that sand will eventually become your soap, your blood sponge, and your exfoliant after your third duel. When your skin is so torn up you literally have to scrub it clean with gravel. You look around. There's a guy missing half his nose. Another one has a tattoo that says Fortis across his chest and the deadest eyes you've ever seen. One of them is probably crying, quietly, into his food, which is basically gruel with some olives, if you're lucky. Then there's the weapons rack. Gladii, tridents, nets, maces, wooden practice swords. Wooden, as if the real ones weren't enough trauma. These aren't tools. These are previews. Every blade you see has been used to kill someone like you. And if you're very lucky, or very unlucky, you'll get to wield one soon. Training begins. It's not elegant. There's no Zen, no Yoda, no montage. You're shoved, beaten, starved, screamed at, and forced to repeat basic movements until your arms feel like sandbags and your legs wobble like a drunken senator at a brothel. You're taught how to block, not to stay alive, but to die slower. You're shown how to posture because half of this career is about dying beautifully in front of an audience that paid extra to sit close enough to smell your last breath. You sleep in a cell with 7 other men who snore like wounded animals and cry like it's illegal, which it probably is. The walls are stone. The beds are wood. The night is filled with the sound of rats and dreams that end in screaming. And still, this is just orientation. You haven't even stepped into the arena yet. You haven't heard the roar. You haven't tasted sand in your mouth while staring up at a crowd chanting for your death. You haven't seen your own blood jet from a wound you didn't even feel until someone pointed at it. But it's coming. Oh, it's coming. And you know what the worst part is? You start getting good at it. You swing the sword like it's part of your body. You parry instinctively. You stop flinching when a blade whistles past your throat. You even start to feel something weird when a crowd cheers for you. Not pride, not joy, something worse. Belonging. Because once the chains come off in the arena, you're still a prisoner. Just one with a fan club. And if you win enough, maybe, just maybe, they'll brand your name into a wooden plaque and throw you a rotting crown of olive branches before they send you to fight a guy twice your size with a trident and a net. But that's later. For now, you sleep with a blade under your straw mat and sand in your wounds. Because the morning comes early, and your new gym membership doesn't include rest days. At first, you think your trainer is a statue. A very large, very scarred, extremely angry statue. Then it moves. You learn quickly, don't make eye contact. Don't talk unless spoken to. And never, Never. Ask what happened to the last guy who trained under him. The answer is probably scattered across 3 different arenas and 1 unmarked grave. His name is Decimus. Or maybe that's just what people call him. No one really knows his real name. Maybe he forgot it after the 5th head he cut off. Or maybe names are for people with souls still in one piece. You've got no idea whether he's here because he's retired or because killing for money got boring and now he's killing for fun. Decimus doesn't smile. He growls in Latin, spits in the sand, and corrects your sword grip by breaking your fingers and telling you to do better. He smells like sweat, oil, and something that died and stayed dead. You are 80% sure that smell is coming from his armor, or his teeth, or his memories. His torso looks like someone tried to draw a road map of the Empire with a dagger. Scars. Everywhere. He has one eye, and you can't tell if it's always half closed because he's lazy or if something once stabbed it halfway into retirement. You line up with the others. He paces. Each time he passes behind someone, that man straightens like his spine was just threatened by divine judgment. One guy breathes too loud. Decimus backhands him so hard he forgets the names of his children, past or future. This is your life now. You don't just train. You unlearn dying. Faster, he grunts, as you swing the wooden sword over and over until your shoulders scream and your grip bleeds. Again, you block wrong. He trips you into the sand. That block gets you killed. And if you're lucky, it's clean. If not, he stabs the dirt next to your head. The ground hisses like it knows something you don't. But then, something weird happens. You get better. You learn to listen, not just to his words, but to the wind in his voice. You start to understand his rhythm. Strike, fake, pivot, kill. And sometimes, just sometimes, he nods. Not approval, not pride, just acknowledgement that you're no longer completely useless. That nod feels like getting kissed by Jupiter himself. Some nights, after the training's done and you're too bruised to move, you watch Decimus sit by the fire, silent. He sharpens a blade that's older than you, maybe older than Rome. You hear stories. How he once killed 5 Thracians alone. How he lost his best friend in the arena and didn't speak for 2 years. How he murdered his lanista with a spoon and got promoted for it. None of them sound real. But looking at him now, face lit by firelight, eyes staring into a past only he can see, you believe every single one. He's not your mentor. He's your warning label. And you realize he's still a killer. He just happens to be training you before your turn. He shows you how to take a man apart like you're peeling fruit. Where to stab so they die slow. Where to stab so they die quick. And most importantly, where to stab if the Emperor's watching and you want to make a show out of it. You asked him once, only once, why he's still here. He looks at you for a long time. Then he says, because they keep sending boys like you. And that's the first time you understand. Gladiator school doesn't retire killers. It just turns them into trainers. You sit down to eat, not in a dining hall, not in a cozy little bistro with linen napkins and candlelight. You're on the dirt, in a pit, elbow to elbow with other condemned men who haven't showered since they were captured. Which is to say, ever. A wooden bowl is shoved into your hands. Inside, barley porridge, a scoop of boiled beans, and if the gods are smiling upon you, they're not. Half a fig that someone already sneezed on. Welcome to the Gladiator diet, designed by men who believe in gains, guts, and gory spectacle. It's a weird contradiction. You're being fed like livestock, but also pampered in a twisted way. The lanista doesn't want you dying of starvation. He wants you dying loudly, in front of thousands, while looking thick and shiny like an oiled-up war god. So they fatten you up, not with steaks and grapes, but with barley mush because it keeps you dense, bloated, and hard to stab cleanly. You're not sculpted like a marble statue. You're built like a meat shield with excellent core strength. Someone across from you makes a joke. Something about how we're all just pigs being stuffed before the slaughter. You try to laugh, but your jaw still hurts from yesterday's lesson on parrying with your face. The meal is bland, but it's hot. And here, hot food is basically a love letter from the gods. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring it. There's nothing to savor. But because once the bowl's empty, that's it until tomorrow. And you know you'll need the fuel. Today's training includes shield formations and falling downstairs on purpose. You glance around. Some guys eat like animals, inhaling their rations as if the beans might sprout legs and run away. Others stare at their bowls like they're looking into their own graves. A few try to barter for more, but all you have to trade is bruises and regret. You hear whispers about gladiator nicknames, how the crowd loves a fat one, a scary one, a pretty one, and how if you get too lean, you're no fun to watch bleed. Nobody wants to see an elegant corpse. They want a big, slow-moving mass of pain and panic, preferably screaming and leaking blood in artistic patterns. There's a word for you and your kind now, Horderius. It means barley man, because while senators sip wine and eat peacock tongues, you eat beans and anxiety. You used to dream of roast meat, cheese, something with spice. Now, you dream of not throwing up from head trauma before you finish your barley. And then there's the treats. Once a week, maybe less, they give you a boiled egg. If you want to fight, they might toss you some honey-dipped dates. It's like trick-or-treating from people who've also stabbed your roommate. And the water? Not from spring, not from a tap. It's from a bucket, warm, metallic, and full of floaties you don't want to identify. But you drink it anyway, because hydration is the difference between passing out mid-duel or dying with flair. One guy near you keeps a stash of stolen nuts hidden in his bedding straw. He brags about them like they're treasure. And here they are. It starts to make sense, all of it. The beans, the barley, the bulk. You're not being trained to win. You're being trained to survive long enough to die interestingly. Too skinny, and you'll bleed out before the fight gets good. Too slow, and you'll never land a showy kill. But just right? Just right means the crowd remembers your death. That's the real goal. Not freedom, not glory. Immortality through agony. If they remember your name after your intestines hit the dirt, you win. And so you eat the barley. You shovel in the beans. You swallow the fear like it's part of the meal. Because tomorrow you might fight. And if you're lucky, really lucky, you'll get to do it on a full stomach. The first time it happens, you don't even realize it's your blood. 1 second, you're swinging your training sword at a guy twice your size, and the next, the world's gone red. There's a cut on your arm. Shallow, stupid, and completely your fault. You blocked too slow, or maybe too low, or maybe Decimus, your walking trauma of a trainer, just wanted to remind you he's faster than gravity. You expect someone to shout, to stop the drill, to toss you a rag. But the only thing you get is a bark command. Keep going, because in here, bleeding is just sweat with a better story. This is Gladiator school, and safe doesn't exist. You're not practicing for a tournament. You're rehearsing your own murder over and over until you can land on the sand with your guts out and still look impressive. The training grounds are full of groaning bodies, bruised shins, dislocated fingers, broken ribs wrapped in crude linen because splints are for the weak and complaining is a punishable offense. And every lesson ends with a cleanup crew that includes buckets of vinegar and a guy with a broom who definitely has PTSD. They call it Paulu's training, the art of beating a wooden post until your muscles stop screaming. You learn to swing a sword the way a blacksmith swings a hammer. Not with finesse, but with purpose, hate, and the hope it lands before your opponent does. But that's just step one. Step two, sparring. Wooden weapons, they said. Safe, they said. What they don't mention is that a wooden gladius moving at full force doesn't bounce. It breaks bones. You pair off. Your opponent is named Tyro. He's newer than you, but built like he's been fed rocks and sarcasm since birth. You swing. He ducks. He counters. Your helmet rings from the impact. You swing again. Miss. He hits your leg. You buckle. The sand tastes like disappointment and barley. Decimus is watching. He's always watching. You could be on fire, and the only feedback you get is tighten your stance. Tyro apologizes quietly. Decimus hears it and loses his mind. Apologize when he's dead, not before. So you stand. You bleed. You swing. And somewhere in that chaos, you start to feel it. Control. Your movements get tighter. Your breath finds rhythm. Your blocks get smarter, cleaner. Your pain becomes background noise, still there but manageable like a bad childhood memory or Roman politics. You're not training to survive anymore. You're training to perform. Because in the arena, no one wants to see you win by accident. They want a show. They want drama. They want you to stab a man, stare at the crowd, and scream a line that'll be quoted on wine goblets for years. And that means learning how to take a hit beautifully. You practice collapsing, not just falling, but falling with style. One leg buckled, one hand out, head tilted like you were in a tragic painting titled Death of a Slightly Handsome Idiot. You get slapped for smiling. You get whipped for flinching. You get praised once, briefly, and that alone keeps you going for days. At night, your body feels like it's been tenderized for someone else's feast. You soak your limbs in vinegar, scrub your bruises with sand, and wrap your hands in cloth stiff with old blood. And then you lie awake and pray the next day doesn't kill you before the crowd gets the chance. You think this is the worst it can get, but you're wrong, because this isn't the fight. This is just the warm-up. You're not just a man anymore. You're a brand. Or at least, that's what they tell you when they drag you in front of the crowd. Half naked, sunburned, bleeding from your shoulder, and announce your new arena name with the same pride someone might announce a child's birth. It's something in Latin. You don't even understand it at first. Mortifer. Sound impressive, right? It means bringer of death, which is generous, considering the last time you sparred, you tripped on your own foot and headbutted a torch. Other gladiators have names like Sanguinus, Bloody One, or Oxizer, Slayer, or Felix, Lucky, he died on day 3. They don't pick names to inspire confidence in you. They pick names so the crowd knows exactly what to chant when your spleen hits the dirt. One guy in your cell was named Bestia, the Beast. He got eaten by actual animals in the arena. Irony is alive and cruel in Rome. The names aren't just for flair. They're part of the show. You're a walking myth now, a symbol. You exist to bleed in high definition, in front of thousands of people who bet on your survival and then eat olives while you die. And once you have a name, it sticks, no matter how stupid, no matter how much you hate it. You're not Marcus or Dion or that guy who cries in his sleep anymore. You're meat for the gods. The crowd will shout your name as you walk into the arena, not because they love you, but because they paid for blood, and your name helps them place their bets faster. The more gruesome your death, the more epic your memory. If you're lucky enough to survive a few fights, your name starts to spread. You become a trading card with abs. Kids outside the arena carve your nickname into walls. Vendors sell dolls shaped like you. Drunks claim they saw you kill a lion with one hand. They didn't. You screamed and ran. But no one remembers that part. They remember your name. But that fame comes with baggage. If the crowd starts chanting someone else's name louder than yours, you're old meat. If a new gladiator gets a better nickname, you're yesterday's corpse with a helmet on. So you start doing things to keep the fire burning. Riskier moves. Flashier kills. More blood. More noise. More drama. You turn every match in a theater because you know the gods aren't watching, but the crowd is. And the crowd is fickle. One day, they scream your name like it's divine. The next, they boo you because you didn't die dramatically enough. You hear of one poor bastard named Spicis the Slow One. He won 3 fights. In his 4th, he slipped, farted, and got impaled by accident. The crowd laughed for days. They remember his name, but not kindly. You once asked Decimus if he ever liked the name they gave him. He just stares and mutters. Names are for tombstones. Then he goes back to sharpening his knife. You realize then, you don't own your name. The crowd does. They chant it. They write it. Eventually, they'll bury it. But until then, your job is to make sure it gets remembered. So you stand a little taller. You oil your skin until it shines like bronze. You carve your name into your own shield, so when you raise it to block a blow, it's the last thing your opponent sees. Because if you're going to die anyway, you might as well do it with a title. They call it a paulus. It's a simple thing. Just a thick wooden post planted into the dirt. Maybe with a straw torso or a chipped helmet nailed on top, if your lanista is feeling generous. But don't let the simplicity fool you. That chunk of timber is about to ruin your self-esteem. Because the first rule of gladiator training is, before you kill a man, you must fail to kill a tree. You've got a wooden sword in your hand, sweat in your eyes, and the voice of Decimus, your trainer, tormentor, and professional sadist, barking behind you like a dog with a whip. He wants precision. He wants commitment. He wants you to imagine the paulus is your enemy. You try. You scream. You swing. You miss. You hit. You bounce off. The paulus does not move. It does not bleed. It does not care. Every strike jars your wrists, rattles your teeth, and sends shockwaves up your spine like the wooden dummy is laughing at your technique. You try again, and again, and again. Hours pass. Your shoulders feel like they're being peeled off your skeleton. Your forearms cramp into claw shapes. Your blisters develop blisters. You hear the others around you, grunts, curses, the occasional thunk of a sword making solid contact. One guy to your left knocks his paulus over. He celebrates. Decimus makes him do 50 push-ups in the dirt because that's not the goal, idiot. The dummy's not the enemy. It's the mirror. Every mistake you make, it reflects. Loudly, painfully, you begin to understand what this really is. It's not about strength. It's about control. Kill with purpose, they say, which sounds poetic until you realize it means knowing how to slice through someone's collarbone without getting stuck. And the paulus? It's not impressed by poetry. It only respects repetition. 1,000 thrusts, 1,000 parries, 1,000 downward slashes until your shoulders go numb and your mind goes blank and your soul quietly leaks out through your elbows. You're told to visualize. Imagine your opponent. Picture the look in his eyes as you raise your blade. But all you can picture is the paulus, unbothered, unmoved, silently judging you like a wooden god of mediocrity. You think this is the lowest point until Decimus walks by and chuckles. Hope your opponent doesn't stand still like that, or you're dead. You are, in every sense, being beaten by a stick. And yet you keep going. Because this is the part no one claps for. No roaring crowd. No women throwing flowers. Just you, the paulus, and your own growing realization that you are not yet terrifying. But one day maybe you will be. One day, your strikes will land with grace. Your movements will be efficient, deadly, beautiful. You'll step into the arena and make the human version of the paulus scream. But today, you grunt like a dying mule and ice your wrists with muddy water. You thought it would be like a gym. Maybe a rough one. Rustic. Lots of grunting. Maybe some motivational yelling. But no, Gladiator School is not a gym. It's a militarized cage match factory run by sociopaths, funded by oligarchs, and decorated by people who think bloodstains are aesthetic. Your day starts before dawn because gladiators apparently don't need sleep, just sunburns and discipline. You wake up on a wooden plank surrounded by 30 other sweaty, snoring contestants in this ancient murder reality show. Someone's farting. Someone's praying. Someone's sharpening a dagger way too calmly. Welcome to Ludus, Rome's version of a motivational retreat. Except instead of yoga and green juice, you get beatings and barley mash. The moment you open your eyes, it begins. Roll call, push-ups, sprints through dirt so thick you could drown in it. Then weapon drills where your instructor, Decimus, the guy who probably chews gravel for fun, screams like your mother's life depends on your footwork. Which it doesn't, but yours might. And don't even think about slacking. One guy tries to fake a limp to skip drills. Decimus throws a spear at him. Not near him. At him. He dodges it. Barely. Everyone applauds. He still has to run laps. After morning drills, it's time for breakfast. It's nutritious. Technically, a big sloppy bowl of beans, barley, and shame. The Romans call it a high-protein diet. You call it gruel that tastes like the inside of a dead mule. But it builds muscle and fat because Rome doesn't want you shredded. They want you massive, big enough to absorb cuts, dramatic enough to bleed for hours. So congratulations, your six-pack dreams just got sacrificed to the gods of crowd-pleasing blubber. Then it's more training, pole fighting, sword drills, mock combat, all while Decimus screams things like, bleed now or die later. Parry like your intestines, depend on it. Smile for the crowd, scum. And then comes the best part. You don't leave. Gladiator school is a lock-in. You sleep here. You eat here. You bathe in a communal trough with water that smells like ambition and athlete's foot. You don't have weekends. You don't have visitors. You don't even have a name anymore. Just your arena alias and your blood type, which, if you're lucky, stays inside you. Some of the guys crack. One tried to run. They found him 3 hours later, crying in a barrel behind the latrines. They made him spar, shirtless in front of the others, while Decimus narrated every hit like it was a wine tasting. You think about escaping too, sometimes. Then you remember you were already a prisoner when they brought you here. This isn't punishment. This is the promotion. Because in here, at least, you have a shot. If you survive long enough to fight in the real arena, you might get fame. Food, maybe even freedom. But until then, you're in a gladiator prison, where every meal is a pep talk and every bruise is a signature. And the worst part, you're starting to get good at it. You think maybe, just maybe, all the beatings, all the barley, all the sweaty mornings screaming into the dirt might be worth it once you step into the arena. That the crowd will rise for you. That your name, Morta for Bestia, meat for the gods, whatever the hell they branded you with, will echo through the stands like thunder from Jupiter himself. That this is your moment. And it is. Except they're not cheering for you. They're cheering at you. And most of them are too drunk to pronounce your name. Welcome to your Roman fan base. 40,000 howling maniacs, sloshed on wine and soaked in sun, screaming for blood like it's a brunch special. They're not here for strategy. They're here for spectacle. You spot a noble woman wearing more eyeliner than clothing. She raises her goblet and giggles, shouting, "Rip his guts out, darling." You're not sure if she's rooting for you or your opponent. She probably doesn't care. She's just here to watch someone die while nibbling cheese. A merchant to your left is arguing with a butcher over whether your last fight was staged. You're 90% sure the guy you stabbed lost a kidney. But no, according to the butcher, you pulled the blow. You didn't. Your wrist still clicks. Then there's the gamblers. They're the loudest. Sweaty, toga-wearing debt factories waving wax tablets and shouting odds like your arteries are dice. One guy yells, "I bet 10 denarii." He gets his head split by the second minute. You turn. He's pointing at you. You don't know whether to cry or wave. Some fans pretend to care. They'll throw you bread after a good match. Maybe wine, if you bleed gracefully. One even tossed a flower once. It hit your eye. You can't hear the cheers without also hearing the jeers. Every time you trip, they laugh. Every time you block a hit, they groan. Every time you win, they complain it wasn't gory enough. You once saw a guy disembowel his opponent, raise the guts to the sky, and scream a war cry. The crowd booed because he forgot to bow afterward. Timing is everything, apparently. But still, you play along. You flex. You snarl. You raise your blade and roar like a lion on fire. Because if you don't, they might not cheer. And if they don't cheer, you might not get picked for the next fight. And if you don't get picked, you rot in your cell, forgotten and bloated on barley. So you learn the game. You fight not just to live, but to perform. You sell every stab, every parry, like it's a scene from a tragic epic. You bleed on cue. You scream at the sky. You give them theater because their attention is currency and you're deep in debt. You once thought fans would bring you pride. Now you realize they bring pressure. They want more. More kills. More carnage. More of you left on the sand, twitching and inspirational. And just when you think they might finally care, might finally respect the art of your survival, a child leans over the balcony and shouts, "I bet my goat you die in the next round." Sweet. Now you're worth livestock. You did it. You survived. The crowd roared. The loser bled. The sand drank everything. Your muscles are screaming. Your armor is cracked. And your blade is sticky with someone else's final thoughts. You just gave the performance of your life. Literally. And what do you win? More time. That's it. Not freedom. Not a villa. Not even a real meal. You just bought yourself the privilege of not dying today. Congratulations. You've leveled up from corpse in training to premium, still-breathing Bloodsport subscription. No one tells you this at the start. They pitch it like you're climbing a ladder. When a few fights impress the crowd, maybe the editor gives you a wooden sword, the rudis, and boom, freedom. But here's the thing they conveniently leave out. That ladder? It's greased with entrails and ends in a pit. Because every fight you win makes you more popular. And every bit of fame is a shackle you can't wiggle out of. You become valuable, entertaining, profitable, which means the last thing they want to do is let you go. So instead of retirement, you get promotion to harder opponents, more exotic weapons, bigger arenas filled with drunk senators and sociopaths in gold sandals. You fought one guy last week. Next time, two. After that, a guy on a horse or maybe a lion. You think you're climbing. You're just circling the drain in gold-plated armor. And the crowd, oh, they love a champion. They chant your name. They throw roses. They name their pets after you. Then one day you trip, miss a block, stumble a little, and suddenly they're screaming for your head like it's halftime entertainment. Because victory in the arena isn't a safe zone. It's a timer extension. You're a piece of meat with a fan club, and the expiration date is just delayed. You've seen what happens to the others. The guy who won 10 fights, dead by the 11th, slipped in his own sweat. The crowd booed because the kill wasn't dramatic enough. There's no hero's journey here. No glory that lasts. Just a longer death sentence, spaced out by applause. And maybe, if you're lucky, a statue. But statues don't bleed. Statues don't feel the way your ribs crack every time you breathe. Statues don't wake up in the night screaming because you keep dreaming of that one time your opponent looked just like your brother. So yeah, you won. You're alive. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Until you don't. Let's talk about the weirdest part of your pre-fight ritual. Not the prayers. Not the blood. Not even the part where you mentally rehearse whether to scream before or after you disembowel someone. No, let's talk about the spa day from hell. It starts when the Lannista's assistant, an ex-slave with judgmental eyebrows and zero personal space, drags you from your cell. You've still got dry blood behind your ears from yesterday's training session, but now it's time to get presentable. Because the Romans, bless their chaos-loving hearts, don't just want to fight. They want to show. And nothing ruins the vibe of public slaughter like dry skin and a bad tan line. First comes the olive oil, poured straight onto your skin like your side of lamb. They don't massage it gently. They slather, neck to toe, elbows, armpits, everything. You're now a human salad. Then comes the sand. Yes, sand. Fine, grainy, gritty sand rubbed right into the oil until your skin is polished like marble and twice as irritated. It exfoliates. It shines. It also gets everywhere. Places you didn't even know you had. You're slick, glowing, and somehow even more terrified. Because here's the thing. This isn't just for hygiene. It's not for scent. It's not even entirely for show. It's to make sure you bleed better. Yep, oiled skin glistens under the sun. Sand scrubs off the dirt and bruises. So when you get stabbed, and you'll get stabbed, the blood shines brighter, pours faster, and looks spectacular under that midday sun. It's stage makeup for a death match. You thought the sand was there to protect your skin? No, it's to make your death more photogenic. Or it would be if cameras existed. Instead, you're getting immortalized in mosaic tiles and amphory painted by men who've never even seen the inside of an arena. Meanwhile, the crowd is taking their seats, tearing bread with greasy fingers, and placing bets on how fast your new exfoliated skin will peel off under a gladius. And here you are, glowing, radiant, slick as a seal, and twice as confused. Your opponent? He's also shimmering like a tortured sun god. You nod at each other, silent, glorious, oiled and doomed. The trumpets blare. The gate creaks open. And as you step onto the sand, again, more sand, as if your skin didn't already have enough, you realize. You've just been prepped like a sacrificial offering in a toga-wearing beauty pageant. You've been fighting for what feels like 3 decades and 2 reincarnations. Your legs are jelly, your sword arms numb, and you're fairly sure there's a rib poking into your lung. But hey, you're still standing. Barely. Your opponent is down, wheezing, leaking, missing something important near the spleen zone. The crowd? Screaming like they just saw Jupiter himself moonwalk across the Colosseum. They're hyped. They want to finish. And the Emperor, oh yes, his eternal sassiness, leans forward in his fancy chair to deliver the verdict. Now here's the thing. You're told that the Emperor gives a thumbs up if he wants mercy and a thumbs down if he wants death. Cute story. Not true. The thumb system was way weirder. Sometimes thumbs up meant kill, because it symbolized a sword being drawn. Sometimes thumbs down meant sheath the blade, a poetic little twist no one in the sand ever understood, especially when their entrails were on the line. But guess what? You don't get a translator. So when the Emperor lowers that hand with a disinterested flick of his wrist, you have exactly 2 options. Take a wild guess. Start bleeding before someone decides for you. Today, you guess wrong. You wait. You breathe. You raise your eyes to the gods. And someone kicks your leg out from under you. Before you can ask whether the Emperor was voting on your performance or your existence, your opponent, yes, the one who was leaking, crawls up and jams something sharp right under your rib. The crowd goes wild. The Emperor nods slightly, as if choosing between wines. And you? You're now a kidney short and 5 pounds lighter. Is this what victory looks like? Crawling through blood mud, clutching your side. Try to remember if urine always looked like that. Some guy near the front row tosses you a chunk of bread like you're a pigeon in armor. How kind. The medics, again, a generous term, drag you backstage. One of them slaps Herbs on your side. The other asks if you can still walk. No one asks how you feel, because feelings aren't gladiator material. Organs, however, are negotiable. You think, maybe next time you'll just die clean and avoid the whole slow organ inventory loss situation. But then you remember, you're still a crowd favorite, and now they love you more because you survived again. Kidney be damned. You just finished gutting a Thracian with the kind of precision that would impress a Roman sculptor and probably disturb a modern surgeon. The man didn't even have time to scream, just gurgled something that might have been mom or mercy, and now his body's twitching in a way that definitely won't get cleaned up for a few hours. You're panting, bleeding, glowing, literally glowing. Why? Because you're about to do what every good gladiator does after a casual murder. You exfoliate. See, in the arena, it's not just about survival. It's about presentation. The crowd expects carnage with contouring, violence with visible pores. And nothing ruins a dramatic victory pose like looking crusty under the midday sun. So what do you do after slashing open a man's liver like a soggy fig? You drop your sword, stagger over his twitching corpse, and borrow his sand bowl. Yeah, he had one. Everyone does. Not for making castles, not for traction, for skincare, and not just any sand. This is arena grade, olive oil infused, blood-slicked Roman luxury grit. Sourced from God's know where, raked fresh every morning, then blessed by a sadistic trainer with a towel and a death wish. It's got just enough bite to scrub the dry blood off your shoulder without flaying you alive. You scoop a handful. Warm, moist, probably unsanitary. You start rubbing it into your chest, like you're prepping for a toga fashion show instead of barely surviving ritualized slaughter. A senator in the front row nods approvingly. His wife fans herself. Your trainer shouts something about don't miss the collarbones. Because that's the thing, gladiators aren't just killers. You're runway models with higher stakes. The oil and sand combo is your foundation, literally and metaphorically. It keeps your skin soft, your scars sharp, and your sweat glistening just right for those dramatic post-fight stances. It also helps when they patch you up later. Less crust, less infection. More marketable muscle definition. You glance back at the guy you just killed. He's not going to need his sand anymore. You take the rest. Some rookie in the corner looks horrified. You toss him a wink. He pukes. Classic. You return to the prep room, sand-covered and radiating murderous spot A energy. Another fighter mutters, nice glow. You nod solemnly. It's exfoliated guilt. The medicus waves you over. He checks your pulse by staring at your chest. Looks fine, he says, mostly to your pectorals. You lie on the stone slab while he stitches a gash on your arm, using thread that smells like vinegar and crushed dreams. The sand on your skin stings, but hey, beauty is pain, and survival is just vanity with stakes. Later, as you sit in your cell, eating cold barley mush and staring at your reflection in a dented bronze plate, you think, maybe you'll die tomorrow. Maybe your next opponent's bigger, faster, or just more caffeinated. But at least when they peel your corpse off the dirt, you'll be smooth, radiant, and ready for your funeral close-up. You just hacked your way through another human being in front of 50,000 screaming strangers. There's blood in your ears, someone else's tooth lodged in your sandal, and a piece of rib stuck to your forearm that definitely didn't come from you. Congratulations, you're still alive. Which means it's time for the next step in the sacred Roman gladiator routine. The communal bath. That's right. Nothing says civilized empire like sharing a tepid, blood-tinged soup bowl with 10 other traumatized men who all look like they just crawled out of a war crime. You shuffle into the bathing chamber on sore legs and one half-functional ankle. The air is thick with steam, sweat, and the quiet existential panic of men who've seen too much. It's not silent, though. There's always a little groaning. Someone muttering a prayer to Jupiter. Someone else coughing up a tooth and pretending it's fine. You glance around. No one's making eye contact. You don't make eye contact. It's the rule. The first man to lock eyes while soaking in a pool full of exfoliated death, shame instantly becomes the weird one. You'll all kill each other in the morning, sure, but now? Now is sacred, awkward silence time. The water is not great. It's warm, yes, but it's also filled with chunks of dried blood, olive oil residue, and possibly an ear floating in the corner. You try not to think about it. You fail. The man next to you is missing a nipple and humming tunelessly. You know him. You nearly killed him last month. He doesn't bring it up. Neither do you. Instead, you focus on scrubbing. Not for cleanliness. That ship sailed after the fourth murder. No, you scrub for ritual, for routine, for the illusion that some part of this life still makes sense. And because sand gets everywhere. Seriously, you have no idea how it ended up there. A trainer walks by, barking about new matchups tomorrow. You pretend not to hear him. You try to disappear into the mist like some war-weary soap opera ghost. You don't succeed. At the far end of the bath, a young recruit stares into space. He hasn't fought yet. His skin is clean, his eyes are wide, and he smells like hope. You give him a nod. He flinches. Give it a week. He'll be bathing with the rest of you, skin covered in old scars and new regrets. He'll stop flinching. He'll start scrubbing. One guy starts laughing for no reason. Another slaps him. No one says anything. Because what is there to say? You're gladiators. You live like animals, kill like legends, and bathe like emotionally unavailable ghosts. They cheer your name now. They throw flowers, coins, and the occasional inappropriate proposition from the upper seats. To the crowd, you're not a slave. Not a corpse to be. You're a hero, baby. A legend. A walking blood-soaked myth with biceps and trauma. But let's be clear, that's only if you're winning. Because in the Roman Colosseum, fame is a blood sport, and survival doesn't guarantee legacy. It just buys you another day. You've seen it happen. One guy, Spiculus, he gets paraded through Rome like a damn demigod. He's got artists painting him mid-stab, sculptors chiseling his abs on a marble, nobles betting land and goats on his kill count. Even Nero, the emperor himself, throws him parties like he's Caesar with a six-pack. And then there's you. You have 6 cracked ribs, one eye slightly off-center, and your name's been spelled 3 different ways in the same arena program. On the board, you're just that Gaul, or Sorty McStabsalot, or the one who screams too much. No one's sketching your face on pottery. No poets immortalizing your combos in verse. You are entertainment. Disposable. The pre-dinner appetizer to someone else's epic. You bury another comrade today. No procession. No statue. Just a quick scrape of sand over his twitching body before the next event starts. A lion gets more ceremony when it dies. You ask a medicus once, what happens to us after? He shrugs. If you're lucky, bones in a ditch. If not, the pigs. Good talk. Meanwhile, the famous ones get tombs. They get fan clubs. They get their names remembered by history books and school children who don't realize that for every Spiculus, there were dozens of fighters who died face first in dirt, their stories swallowed by the roar of the crowd and the sweep of a broom. You start to wonder if the sand itself remembers. So many bodies, so many names. Do the grains whisper? Do they hold your blood like a secret? Or does every drop disappear like you will? Unmarked, unmentioned, unmourned? Maybe if you win tomorrow, they'll remember your name. Maybe not. But hey, at least they'll see you shine, glistening under the sun with olive oil and dread. And for a few minutes, the crowd will love you again. Just long enough to forget you faster. You dream. Not often. Not well. But enough. You dream of waking up without chains rattling against stone. Of stretching in a morning sun without a trainer shouting for you to stop breathing like a lazy pig. You dream of your real name. Not the stage name carved into the board at the arena gates. Not the crowd's chantable version of who you are. But your actual name. The one your mother whispered to you before the world became this meat grinder. You dream of freedom. But while you sleep in your cramped cell, tangled in your own sweat and silence, the arena just waits. It doesn't sleep. It hungers. And it doesn't want your dreams. It wants your guts. The kind that splash dramatically. The kind that sizzle when they hit the sun-baked sand. The kind that leak out slowly enough to entertain the crowd, but not so fast you can't scream a bit first. In the Colosseum, your body is an offering, and your soul, it's background noise. When you were first thrown into this nightmare, filthy, furious, fresh off a battlefield or a prison barge or a failed rebellion, you didn't understand how the system worked. You thought maybe if you fought well enough, kept your head down, didn't die too dramatically, you'd earn your way out. That's what they told you. Fight with honor. Win the crowd. Win your freedom. And gods, you wanted to believe it. But after your third kill, after the way the crowd cheered, not for your survival, but for the sound your opponent made when he hit the ground, you started to understand. Freedom isn't the point. You aren't a soldier. You're not even a criminal anymore. You're a character in someone else's soap opera of suffering. The arena doesn't care how many matches you survived. It doesn't care about your scars unless they make for good stories. You could win 20 times, and they'd still throw you in with a lion just because some senator's nephew is in the audience and wants to see a real death. They don't want a survivor. They want a legend, and legends usually end in tragedy. You've seen the hopeful ones. The guys who keep tally marks scratched into the walls, who still ask the Lanista about contracts, who whisper to each other that if they win 2 more fights, 3 more fights, they'll be free men. They don't last. The arena doesn't retire you. It retires your limbs, one by one, or all at once. You want to leave? You'd better leave a stain worth remembering. And yet, you still dream. You dream in secret, quietly, softly, in the moments when your heartbeat doesn't sound like a war drum. You dream of a small plot of land, a warm meal, a night without screaming, maybe someone to hold, maybe just a blanket that doesn't smell like mildew and fear. But freedom isn't just rare. It's useless if you're too broken to enjoy it. You've seen the lucky ones, the ones who earn their wooden swords, the symbol of freedom. The ceremony's small, awkward, sometimes tearful. The crowd claps politely. The ex-gladiator stands tall. And then he limps into a world that doesn't want him anymore. Because outside these walls, you're not a hero. You're a butcher with a past. You know how to kill, how to bleed. You've forgotten how to plant a crop, how to trade, how to speak without shouting or threatening. Freedom, when it finally comes, feels more like exile. And so, some of them come back. They don't fight, not officially. They train others, guard doors, sell oil, and sand to the next batch of doomed hopefuls. You pass them in the corridors. You see the way they look at the arena, like it's a lover that broke their heart, like it's a god they can't stop worshiping. And you get it, because as much as the arena hates you, it knows you. Out there, you're just a man. In here, your story, a symbol, a spectacle. You close your eyes again, and for a moment, you see it, the sunlight, the breeze, the road that leads away from Rome. Then you hear the crowd, the roar, the rumble of drums. You open your eyes, and someone hands you a sword. No dream today, just another performance. The sun is high, the sand is hot, and the crowd is drunk on bloodlust and bad wine. You, on the other hand, are stone-cold sober, partially armored, and standing in the middle of a very large arena with only one item on your to-do list today. Don't get eaten. A tall order, considering the creature snarling across from you, is not a man. He doesn't hold a sword. He doesn't have a name. He didn't lose a bet or offend a senator or get sold into slavery. No, he's just a lion. And unlike you, he's having a great day. See, you're on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion, dehydration, and chronic existential dread. You're still nursing a cracked rib from last week's practice duel, and a solid chunk of your left thigh is currently being held together by prayer and dried herbs. But the lion? The lion slept all morning. He got massaged with oils. They even starve him for a few days to make sure he's theatrically hungry. Because this isn't just a fight. This is the finale. The arena crowd has already watched 2 beheadings, a staged sea battle, complete with drowning actors, and one unlucky guy get torn apart by leopards while tied to a giant phallic statue? Don't ask. Roman entertainment was weird. Now they want something memorable. And that's where you come in. You're the highlight kill. The cherry on top. The midnight snack for the Empire's favorite apex predator. There are no rules. You have a spear that's shorter than it looks, and a net you barely know how to use. The lion has claws, teeth, and an utter disregard for your dreams of retiring peacefully. This wasn't even your assigned match. The original guy backed out. Well, backed out is generous. He fainted, vomited, and tried to climb the arena wall before being dragged off by handlers. So naturally, your name was drawn next. You're not even a bestiarius, one of those lunatics trained specifically to fight animals. You're just a regular gladiator with half a death wish and a public. They open the gate. The lion steps out like he owns the place, which, to be fair, he kind of does. The crowd goes wild. Trumpets blare. Some idiot in the noble seats throws a coin at your feet like that's going to help you not die. You lock eyes with the beast. Its expression says one thing loud and clear. I have no respect for your plot arc. You try to remember your training. Aim for the eyes, or the throat, or just run in circles and hope it dies of boredom. But you know the truth. This isn't about skill. It's about spectacle. The lion charges. You sidestep, barely, tossing the net, which tangles on your foot instead. Classic. You jab the spear, it nicks its shoulder, and now it's really mad. You scramble backward, praying to every god you can remember. Mars, Jupiter, that Egyptian one with the falcon head. Hell, you'd even consider converting to Judaism if it buys you a miracle. But the lion doesn't care about theology. The lion doesn't care about politics. The lion doesn't even care that you once had dreams of becoming a blacksmith or a farmer or literally anything other than a meat puzzle. It lunges again. You stab this time deep. It roars, swipes, catches your arm. Blood sprays. Yours. You fall. The world spins. The crowd is on their feet. They think this is fantastic. To them, your pain is the price of a good afternoon. To you, it's the realization that you were never the hero of this story. You're not Maximus. You're not Spartacus. You're bait. But somehow, through a mix of dumb luck and desperate adrenaline, you roll, you stab, and by the gods, you survive. The lion slumps. The crowd erupts. You are covered in sweat, sand, and at least 2 types of blood. You are limping, shaking, possibly concussed, but you're alive, and you'd think that'd be the end of it. But as you're dragged back toward the cells, clutching your bleeding side and trying not to pass out, your trainer leans in and says, "Good job. They want to see you fight too next time." There you are, kneeling in the corner of the arena, face smeared with sweat, blood, and the fine grit of Rome's favorite death sand, trying not to puke from exhaustion or panic. You're clutching a dull gladius with fingers that stopped working properly 2 fights ago, and across the arena stands a towering brute named Messer, Latin for the Reaper. Charming. He's fresh. He's smug. And he's spinning a massive trident like this is some blood-drenched Cirque du Soleil. You've got a broken shin guard and a mild concussion. So when the sun hits just right and the crowd shadows shift, you don't expect to see anything but a blur of faces screaming for blood. But then there it is, his face. Front row. Golden laurel. Wine cup in hand. Your old teacher. No, not your combat trainer. Not the man who showed you how to gouge someone with a shield rim. We're talking about Lucius, your first tutor. The man who taught you to read, write, and dream above your station. He was supposed to be the one who saw you, who said you were too clever for the fields, who gave you that tattered scroll of Homer and whispered, "Your mind is your sword." You believed him, even when you got sold, even when you got branded, even when your life became a montage of screaming and stabbing and trying not to bleed to death in front of drunken senators. You believed he'd remember you. And now, He's tossing grapes into his mouth and cheering for the other guy. Go for the throat, he bellows, standing up and pointing at you with all the theater of a man who's definitely never fought for his own life, but has strong opinions about how you should lose yours. And that breaks something deeper than any blade could. Because this isn't just some rando noble with bad taste and bloodlust. This is the man who told you you were meant for greater things. And now he's wagering his toga money that Messer, a man who once bit another gladiator's ear clean off, will crush your skull before the sun sets. You want to scream. You want to hurl your sword like a javelin of righteous indignation. You want to shout, "Hey, Lucius, remember when I used to copy Cicero quotes for you while you drank watered wine?" But you can't, because right now, you're not a student, not a man, not even a person. You're the undercard, the entertainment, the meat. And Lucius? He's just another Roman enjoying his afternoon snack with a side of soul-crushing betrayal. Messer charges. You block, barely, sparks flying from your shield as your knees buckle. Your ears ring. Your breath shortens. You backpedal, foot slipping in something that was definitely someone's intestine 10 minutes ago. Messer laughs. Lucius claps. You wonder, just for a second, what would have happened if you'd stayed quiet, never learned to read, never looked up. Would this hurt less? The fight continues in a blur of sand and rage and muscle memory. You take a slice to the ribs. Give one back. Blood spatters. Yours. His. Who knows anymore? At some point, Messer makes a mistake. Too cocky. Too slow. And you drive your sword under his arm, deep. He collapses, screaming. The crowd explodes, roaring approval. And Lucius? He sips his wine. No emotion. No recognition. Just a satisfied nod, as if you're exactly where you belong. Ah yes, sand. That glorious, ever-present substance covering every inch of the arena. Your body, your bunk, your battle wounds, and probably your dinner. To a Roman patrician, it's just decorative. To a child, it's a plaything. But to you, it's everything. It's the floor you fight on, the stuff you bleed into, the powder that masks the smell of death. And, most importantly, it's your skincare routine. Yes, really. Because long before overpriced sea salt scrubs and spa packages with words like detoxifying volcanic ash, there was you, a half-starved gladiator massaging coarse arena sand into your filthy, sweat-slick skin under torchlight, hoping it'll rub off the grime, the shame, and the lingering scent of your opponent's spleen. Why? Because in a profession where you're shirtless 90% of the time and your job description includes look good while dying, your body is your billboard. You're bruised. You're sliced. You're limping. But by Jupiter's armpit, your skin is glowing. It's ironic, really. The same coarse grains that soak up blood, arterial spray included, get scooped up after the match, tossed into a bucket, and later smeared lovingly across your back by some fellow gladiator with hands like chisels and a voice like gravel. There's no soap, no perfume, just sand, oil, and trauma. But hey, that mixture works. It buffs out the dead skin, scrapes away the dry blood, and leaves you just raw enough to feel slightly alive again. Sure, it stings, but what doesn't? The crowd adores a smooth-chested killer. They want muscle. Shine, a figure sculpted like Mars himself, even if underneath it all you're held together with old stitches and spite. And let's be honest, part of you enjoys it, not in a self-care, bubble bath kind of way, more like ritual, more like reclaiming a body they keep trying to break. Because when you rub sand into your arms after a match, you're not just polishing flesh, you're scrubbing the fear off, the trembling. The image of that guy who looked you in the eye while you disemboweled him. He was 19, maybe younger. The way his blood sprayed across your chest wasn't elegant. It wasn't theatrical. It was messy, warm, horribly human. So you take the sand and you grind it in. You exfoliate like your sanity depends on it, because it kind of does. Your body's a canvas of cuts and contradictions. You're a killer who smells like lavender oil on good days and murder sweat every day. You're a crowd favorite, a walking corpse, and a reluctant skincare pioneer. And yes, sometimes if you close your eyes and scrub hard enough, the sand makes you feel clean. Until you remember that the same granules you're using once held the blood of your best friend. Or that guy with the kind eyes. Or the girl who was promised her freedom after one last fight. Plot twist. She didn't win. So you don't just rinse. You rinse twice. You pretend the coppery smell isn't clinging to you. You smear on more oil. And when you walk back out into the arena the next day, abs glistening, skin flawless. No one in the crowd thinks about where that sand's been. But you do. There's something deeply comforting about mascots. For some, it's a smiling dolphin. For others, it's a giant foam chicken with human eyes that scream existential crisis. But for you, the proud and perpetually bleeding member of a Roman gladiator school, your mascot is something different. It's death, not metaphorically, not artistically. We're talking an actual skeletal figure, carved from ash wood or painted onto the walls of the ludus, complete with a sickle in one hand, a wine jug in the other, and, because this is Rome, a luscious, flowing mullet that could make even a vestal virgin swoon. This isn't irony. This isn't satire. This is branding. Your school doesn't shy away from the whole "you're gonna die screaming" theme. No, they embrace it like a stage mother with a knife. They name your cohort the Sons of Silence, which sounds deep until you realize it refers to the fact that most of you will die without a single word written about you. Charming. In front and center of your training yard, a faded mosaic of Mr. Death himself, mid-stride, mullet whipping in the wind like he just stormed out of an arena rock concert and into a battlefield. New recruits laugh at it. Veterans stare. Some mutter little prayers under their breath as they pass it. You just nod, because that weird, bony bastard with the dead man swagger is the only honest face you see all day. Let's be real. You don't fight for glory. You don't fight for freedom, not really. You fight for the crowd, for the coin, for the chance to breathe a little longer than the poor sap you're elbow deep inside of. And the mascot? He gets that. He's not pretending. Unlike the trainers who tell you pain is weakness leaving the body, it's not. It's tendons. Unlike the Lanista who promises freedom after 10 wins, he meant his wins, not yours. Unlike the cheering crowd who pretends this is sport, not state-sponsored murder with snacks. No, death doesn't lie. He grins. He waits. And he rocks a hairstyle that says, "I kill people, but I'm also into speed chariots and loot solos." Sometimes you imagine what it'd be like to wear that mullet, to become that symbol. Not because you want to be death, but because in a world where everyone pretends to be something they're not. Heroes, saints, warriors. Death is the only one who shows up exactly as he is, bare-boned, blood-soaked, and undefeated. You smear sand into your arms, oil into your chest, and blood across your memory. And you look up at that mascot, painted in reds and blacks that haven't flaked in decades. You salute, not mockingly, not bitterly, because one day, that'll be you. Not the face, not the fame. Just the forgotten bones under the arena. Maybe you'll be painted too. Maybe not. But at least someone might remember the mullet. Ah, the statue. The dream of every gladiator who doesn't want to end up as just another stain in the sand. Immortality carved in marble. Your muscles, your victory pose, your glorious, glistening abs immortalized in a form that screams, "I was someone." You imagine it sometimes. Eyes closed, blood drying on your chest, ribs bruised, lungs heaving from another close encounter with disembowelment. The crowd roars. The emperor nods. You're hoisted onto a slab and chiseled into legend. Maybe a pigeon will poop on your likeness someday. That's fine. That's prestige. But before you get there, before the sculptor can lovingly exaggerate your delts and understate your panic, you've got to perform a little ritual. Not a religious one, not a military one. No, you have to bathe in urine. Yes, urine. Specifically, aged human pee that's been fermenting in a clay vat behind the latrines of the training yard for what smells like eternity. Why? Because, dear legend in the making, Roman hygiene is a paradox wrapped in vinegar and shame. See, urine, full of ammonia, is Rome's go-to cleaning agent. They use it to bleach clothes, whiten teeth, polish armor, and, in your unfortunate case, exfoliate skin before victory parades and public display. Can't have you looking crusty while being carried through the forum, can we? So here you are, freshly bruised and mildly concussed, standing in a grimy wooden tub behind the ludus, while a slave pours what is very definitely not lemon water over your aching limbs. You wince, not just because it burns, but because it soaks into your open wounds, and suddenly every cut on your body feels like it's hosting a Roman bonfire. Your skin sizzles, your nostrils revolt, and you think, I killed 3 men this week. For this. Meanwhile, your fellow gladiators are lined up behind you, laughing or grimacing, some both. One guy hums a tune, another's dry heaving into the straw. It's bonding in a twisted way. Nothing says brotherhood like a group piss bath, followed by olive oil rubdowns. And you tell yourself it's worth it, because tomorrow you'll stand in the forum, gleaming. Crowd will chant your name. Children will look up at your statue in awe. Senators will toast you with imported wine, and poets will pretend they saw your final blow from the front row instead of hiding behind a fruit vendor. You'll smile. Maybe, because the sun's on your shoulders and your name is echoing off marble walls. But here's what no one sees. They don't see the urine ritual. They don't hear you cry softly into your elbow while trying not to inhale. They don't smell the acid sting that still clings to your skin when the parade starts. All they see is the statue. Chiseled jaw, polished shield, that iconic pose, mid-swing, mid-scream, mid-glory. No mention of the fact that your sandals still reek. And that's Rome for you, a city obsessed with appearances. They'll carve your likeness in stone, but they won't carve the truth. Like the time your shoulder popped out mid-fight and you won with one arm. Or the 3 nights a week you wake up screaming from dreams you'll never describe. Or the fact that before your big debut, a man named Felix doused you in ancient urine while saying, "Don't squirm, it sets in better when you're relaxed." Immortal? Maybe. Dignified? Absolutely not. Here's something nobody told you when you first stumbled into the ludus, half-starved and shackled. Fame makes you attractive. Not strength. Not honor. Not your charming personality or your tragic backstory about being sold by your cousin to pay off gambling debts. No. Fame. Public spectacle. That special glow that comes from walking out of the arena with blood on your chest and a roaring crowd in your ears. That's what turns heads. That's what makes women lean over balconies and whisper, "That one? That's Gaius. He split a man in half last Thursday." They don't care that you've got a missing molar and a crooked toe. They don't care that you flinch at loud noises and have nightmares about sand. Nope. You won. You survived. You strutted past the Emperor's box with your gladius held high and your abs practically sparkling with oil and sweat. And suddenly, you're the hottest thing since that one centurion who got trampled by an elephant during the Saturnalia Games. They send you gifts, bread, jewelry, the occasional love poem etched into a fig. They blow kisses from the balconies. They sneak notes into your training gear, all fluttery script and thinly veiled offers. Some even pay. Yes, pay to spend a night with you. You're a killer, sure, but in Rome? That's just foreplay. It's intoxicating. You, who used to beg for scraps are now desirable. A fantasy. You've got scars and trauma and probably some undiagnosed head injuries. But none of that matters because right now, you're the guy who killed the Thracian with a single upward stab through the armpit. And when you walk through the forum, even senators' wives glance at you. Even slaves whisper. Even the patrician daughters whose sandals cost more than your life nod politely as you pass. Why? Because you're a celebrity. But then, you lose. Not fatally. Not yet. But badly. You're slow in the ring. Your foot slips. Your opponent pins you. The crowd boos. The emperor sighs. The lanista shakes his head like he's just watched his prized racehorse take a dump mid-sprint. You limp off the sand. No laurel wreath. No applause. Just blood, bruises, and the realization that your magic has an expiration date. And suddenly those love notes stop coming. That senator's wife can't remember your name. She's into that new guy now, Cassius or Crassus, or whatever the hell else with the golden armor and perfectly symmetrical cheekbones. Your next fig basket has a note that just says, good effort. Your fans are already speculating whether you've lost your edge. Even the guy who used to oil your chest before matches now pats you like a tired donkey. Because in Rome, admiration is a currency, and yours just devalued. You were sex on legs when you were slaughtering men in style. Now you're just another reminder that even heroes have off days. And who wants to be seen with yesterday's victory? You could win again. You might. But the shine is dim now. There's a young recruit with wide shoulders and no emotional baggage. There's a new champion who hasn't yet cried in his bunk at night. You, though, you know the truth. The crowd isn't loyal. The affection isn't real. The women didn't want you. They wanted your moment. And that moment, it's bleeding out in the arena sand while someone younger, hotter, and less haunted steps into your place. The crowd goes wild. The trumpet blares. 100 fists pump in the air as your opponent hits the ground like a dropped ham. You stand over him, breath wheezing, gladius slick with blood, and try to lift your arm in triumph. You win. You survived. You're still here. Congratulations. You now get to live with a permanent limp, a busted ankle, and the growing suspicion that one of your kidneys is playing hide and seek. Because victory in the Roman arena doesn't come with medals. It comes with scar tissue, bone splinters, and chronic pain that makes stairs your mortal enemy. No one warns you about that when they're offering you the chance at eternal glory and maybe a wine-soaked afterparty. Let's talk about your ankle. Remember that clever little move where you dodged a spear and rolled sideways like some kind of athletic mongoose? Yeah, that's when you snapped a tendon. You didn't notice it at the time. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug, but now you can't walk 5 paces without sounding like a bag of breaking celery. Every step is an adventure in wincing. And you're back? Oh, sweet Jupiter, you're back. You took a mace to the ribs 3 fights ago. And while you technically won that match by stabbing the guy through the chin, your spine has been playing a sad violin ever since. There's no physiotherapy in the ludus. No healing retreats. No long-term health coverage. The closest thing you get to medical care is an old ex-surgeon named Lartius who once stitched his own thigh closed during a bar brawl and now treats everything with vinegar, prayer, and screaming. Walk it off, he says, pouring something acidic into your open gash. I can't walk it off, you hiss through gritted teeth. He shrugs, then limp with honor. And you do, because what else is there? The crowd sees you standing at the gates, flexing your sword arm, looking stoic and statuesque. They don't see how long it took you to get out of bed that morning. They don't see the blisters, the twitch in your right eye, the way you can't feel 3 of your toes, but can absolutely feel your hips screaming like a betrayed lover every time you move too fast. Your fellow gladiators? They get it. Every one of them walks like a badly reassembled puppet. One guy's shoulder clicks like a metronome. Another has to sleep sitting up because of cracked ribs that never healed right. One dude just drags his left leg behind him now. It's practically a roommate. This is the reality of victory in Rome. You get a wreath. You get dinner. You get your name shouted in taverns. And you get a lifelong relationship with pain. But hey, you're still alive. And in this game, survival is the only real trophy. You might be broken. You might creak and hobble and wince at every sudden movement. But your opponent? He's a corpse on a card. And that makes you the winner. Welcome to the Spoliarium, the locker room, the prep zone, the blood-slick sanctum where broken gods stretch, sharpen, and silently pray not to die today. It's where you go before the fight and after the fight. Sometimes during. It smells like sweat, iron, old leather, ego, and whatever despair feels like when it's mixed with liniment oil. The benches are stone. The towels are theoretical. And your new locker buddy? His name is Bonebreaker. Not metaphorically. Not ironically. Literally. Titus Bonebreaker Vero. 6 feet of solid menace. Arms like battering rams. Eyes that never blink. A grin that makes you wonder if he sleeps in a grave. They call him Bonebreaker because that's what he does. Snaps collarbones like breadsticks. Shatters knees mid-spin. Once cracked a man's skull so hard they had to scoop brain matter out of the sand with a ladle. And you're now sharing an oiled-up bench with him, trying not to make direct eye contact while stripping down for your pre-fight ritual rubdown. He doesn't say much, just sharpens his blade slowly, like he's having a quiet conversation with it. He hums, low, off-key, possibly a lullaby, possibly the sound of someone losing their soul. You try to keep it casual, stretch a little, check your gauntlets, tie your sandals, all the while pretending you're not sitting 3 feet away from a human war crime with a nickname that sounds like something you'd scream during a nightmare. Then he speaks. You up next? He asks, not looking at you. Yeah, you say, against a reedy Arius. He nods. Watch the net. They love the net. Then goes back to humming and polishing a helmet that has someone else's tooth stuck in it. This is normal, because in the world of gladiators, the guy who terrifies the city is just another sweaty teammate. He gets dressed like you, eats boiled beans like you, uses your soap without asking, and possibly dreams about killing you if you ever land a better match. Camaraderie in the ludus is weird. You bleed together. You train together. Sometimes you fight each other. Sometimes you bury each other. There's an intimacy to it, one that's soaked in blood and built on trauma. Bonebreaker might literally end you one day, but today, he hands you your bracers and grunts. Good luck. You say thanks, because what else do you say to a man who crushed 3 ribs with his elbow last week? The worst part, you get used to it, to the bruised banter, to the smell, to the casual conversations about disembowelment and dietary fiber. There's a guy named Cat Killer, another named Venom. One guy calls himself the Widowmaker, though he's mostly known for tripping over his own shield. And you don't have a name like that yet. You're just that one with the scar in the eyes. But give it time. Win enough fights, leave enough bodies, maybe tear a tendon or 2, and one day they'll call you something equally terrifying, like the Rib Ripper, or the Sandstorm, or just that bastard. Until then, you towel off next to Bonebreaker and try not to wonder how many vertebrae he's collected like souvenirs. You just survived another fight. You got a black eye, a chipped tooth, and your shoulder is doing this weird clicking thing it definitely didn't do yesterday. You're dehydrated, bleeding, and so exhausted that you might cry if you have to walk more than 10 steps. Naturally, this is the moment your manager shows up. And by manager, we mean the ex-slave turned entrepreneurial vulture assigned to monetize every square inch of your existence. He's already waving a ceramic jar in your face, grinning like he's discovered fire. You're glistening, he shouts as if it's good news. Perfect. Don't wipe it off. Not yet. I need 6 more drops. And before you can even process that, he's pressing cloths against your chest, your arms, your armpits. Dab, dab, dab. Into the jar they go. Sealed, labeled, ready for the market. They're going to sell your sweat. Why? Because some Roman matron with more gold than dignity believes gladiator perspiration makes her irresistible. Because in this twisted world, the more blood-soaked your victory, the more desirable your musk becomes. You, a barely fed murder machine with cracked heels and sand in your hair, have become an exotic fragrance. And it's not just the sweat. There's the blood-spattered loincloths, which sell as fertility totems. The shavings from your weapons, marketed as virility charms. One guy even had a toenail auctioned after he took down a charioteer with a dislocated knee. It fetched more than his freedom papers. Meanwhile, you're sleeping on a straw mat with 2 other half-dead men and a rat named Marcus. And yet the crowds adore you. They slather your bodily fluids on themselves like they're made of divine ambrosia. They dab your sweat behind their ears before going to parties. They whisper, it smells like danger and passion, and that one time he stabbed a Gaul in the face. To them, you're not human. You're a symbol, a fantasy, a very sexy, very disposable god of death who smells like desperation and boiled barley. And your manager? Oh, he's thriving. He sells tiny wax figurines of you. He sells your laundry water. He once tried to get you to spit in a cup for romantic tinctures. You're not sure if that's alchemy or just desperate capitalism. You say, do I get a cut? He laughs so hard he nearly chokes. No, no, no. You get glory. I get coin. The gods approve, right? The gods. The same ones who sat silently while you got stabbed in the thigh last week. You consider refusing. But the truth is, you can't afford to. If you don't play along, he tells the Lanista you've gone difficult, and difficult gladiators don't stay alive long. Difficult gladiators mysteriously end up in warm-up rounds against starving tigers. So you let them bottle your sweat. You let them scrape your skin and sell your essence and lie about what you eat. Only figs and raw courage, they claim. You smile when they paint your face on perfume bottles and call it Essentia Invictus. But deep down, you know the truth. You don't smell like glory. You smell like fear, blood, cheap oil, and the kind of regret you can't scrub off with olive soap. It's a one day off. No swords, no screaming crowds, no dodging tridents thrown by a guy who used to be a goat thief. Just peace. Maybe even a chance to relax. That's adorable. You wake up sore in places you didn't know had names. Your back feels like it lost a drinking contest with a horse. Your leg twitches involuntarily. So the Lanista generously, compassionately sends you to the spa. Ah, yes, the Gladiator Spa, a place where Rome's most disposable weapons come to bleed recreationally. Step 1, leeches. A sweating attendant named Otho drapes you in a linen cloth that still smells like the last guy's panic, then applies leeches to your bruised legs to balance the humors. You try not to scream, or vomit, or cry. All acceptable reactions, by the way, especially when the leeches start wiggling inside your scars. You whisper, is this supposed to help? Otho, dead-eyed, shrugs. Maybe, maybe not. But they do it to senators, too. Comforting. Step 2, sand rubbing. That's right. The same sand you fight on. The same sand soaked with blood, bile, and whatever was leaking out of that one guy's intestine last week. That sand is now your exfoliant. A large man named Cassius, whose hobbies include crushing walnuts with his thumb and humming gladiator dirges, begins scrubbing your skin with oil and arena dust. Not gently, not lovingly, more like he's trying to sand a door. You're wincing. He's grinning. Your skin is screaming. Great for circulation, he says, flinging what might be bone fragments off your back. Step 3, therapeutic beating. It's called a percussive massage, which is Latin for "we hit you softly with sticks." Softly, if the sticks were made of lead and the masseuses had anger issues. You get thumped like a curse drum. Every joint pops. Every bruise complains. You feel different. Not better. Just rearranged. Cassius pauses mid-thump to apply a soothing paste made of myrrh, mint, and what smells suspiciously like fermented donkey urine. You try not to breathe. Oh, and don't forget the burning herbs, he says. Because of course they're burning herbs. They stuff crushed herbs into a hollowed-out horn and blow smoke directly onto your wounded skin while chanting something that might be calming or a recipe for summoning Mars. You leave the spa session with fewer parasites, rawer skin, a headache, and the overwhelming sense that someone just spiritually mugged you. You're not relaxed. You're emotionally exfoliated. And let's not forget the trauma. During your recovery time, you're encouraged to reflect, reconnect with yourself, meditate on the fights, the kills, the close calls. You try, but instead of inner peace, all you find is a rerun of that time a Thracian tried to cut your ear off with a sickle. You go back to your cell, cleaner on the outside, haunted on the inside. You lie on a cracked mat and whisper, self-care is a lie. Your neighbor moans and agrees. So you've survived another week of Mortal Kombat. That's 7 days of dodging blades, parrying spears, eating lentils with rocks in them, and hearing your own bones ask politely if they can retire. Congratulations. You've earned your reward. No, not freedom. Don't be ridiculous. You get something far more Roman. A day of recovery. Now, when normal citizens hear the word recovery, they imagine soft couches, grapes, wine, and maybe a small nude servant playing the flute. That's adorable. You're a gladiator. Your spa day begins in a mud-walled room that smells like hot vinegar and blood-soaked towels, and ends with someone grinding dead skin off your back like they're sanding a chariot wheel. Let's walk through it together. You enter the dim-lit treatment chamber, barely able to bend your knee. There's a guy waiting. His name's Otho. He's got one eye, 3 teeth, and all the warmth of a dying torch. He greets you with a basin full of leeches, glistening, writhing, hungry little bastards who specialize in ancient medicine and modern nightmares. He doesn't ask. He just places one on your thigh wound, another on your temple, and 2 more on your back, which he insists will realign your humors. You ask if this is necessary. He shrugs. Do you want to die bloated? You don't know what that means. But it sounds bad, so you let the flesh slug slurp away. They squirm. You twitch. Otho hums a tune that may or may not be a hymn to the goddess of migraines. Once you're sufficiently drained of blood and optimism, you're led to Cassius, your personal scrubber. He's a man the size of a war elephant who smells like basil and fury. His job? Rub your body with a mix of sand, ash, and olive oil until you're refreshed. Cassius applies this ancient Roman skincare technique with the grace of a blacksmith polishing a murder weapon. He starts with your back, using a curved bronze strigil to scrape away grime, sweat, and dignity. You whimper. He tells you to breathe through the pain. You scream. He says that means it's working. When he moves to your chest, you ask if he can avoid the cracked ribs. He laughs like you just told a joke about Cicero's oratory. Then, to your horror, he starts scraping your feet with crushed pumice stone. You've fought lions with more mercy than this man. Feeling freshly skinned, you lie down on a wooden slab for what they call a therapeutic percussion massage. It involves a towel, hot oil, and 2 birch rods. Cassius returns, because of course it's him again, and starts rhythmically striking your legs, back, and shoulders. Lightly at first, then harder, then at a speed that suggests he's trying to drive out demons. You feel your spine realign, or maybe unalign. Hard to say. The whole time he mutters things like good tension here and excellent bruise density. You become a living chart of trauma to help you relax. Otho returns with a burning clay dish filled with herbs and goat hair. He waves it under your nose while chanting something that may or may not be a tax code. The smoke smells like moldy incense mixed with old socks, but it allegedly opens the pores of the soul. You start coughing. Cassius throws a towel over your head and tells you to embrace the sacred fumes. You black out briefly. When you wake up, someone's painting a charm on your chest with chalk and wine. It translates loosely to "please don't die tomorrow." Now you're supposed to meditate, reflect, visualize peace. Instead, all you can picture is that one guy who faked a limp and then stabbed you in the foot with a trident. Your breathing exercise turns into a full-blown flashback spiral. You think about the arena's sand, the sound of the crowd when your opponent died, the way his hand kept twitching after you split his helmet in two. You're not relaxed. You're haunted. You ask if this is normal. Cassius shrugs. At least you're not screaming like the guy last week. To finish, they dump a bucket of cold water over you, slap some frankincense paste on your wounds, and tell you you're cleansed. You look like a plucked chicken. You feel like a tenderized ham. And you smell like oregano and despair. You limp back to your barracks with new bruises, less skin, and a deeper understanding of why Roman society collapsed. The dream was always freedom. Every slash, every parry, every near-death moment. All of it leading up to that glorious day when someone in the crowd shouts your name, the emperor gives you a nod, and they hand you the wooden sword, the rudis, that says, "You made it. You're done." You thought it'd feel like flying. Turns out, it feels a lot more like waiting to die again, but with worse seats. Your big ceremony is over in minutes. A speech, some awkward clapping, and suddenly you're just a guy again. No armor, no weapon, just a robe that doesn't fit, sandals that squeak, and a pit in your stomach the size of a lion's jaw. They tell you, you're free. You look around and realize, free to do what? Option 1, go home. Except you don't have a home. Your village forgot your name. Your parents, if they're alive, probably told everyone you died a long time ago. And even if they didn't, showing up covered in scars and PTSD tends to ruin a dinner party. So you stay near the arena. You know it. You smell like it. You dream about it. And that's how you end up with front row seats. A shiny little honor for the gladiator who earned his freedom. It's meant to be a reward. It's really a curse with cushions. Every time the gates open and a young man steps out into the blinding sun, you see yourself. You know how it feels. The dust in your throat, the sweat stinging your eyes, the weight of 1,000 drunk strangers betting on your death. And now, you're in the crowd, surrounded by toga-clad senators, giggling nobles, and children who scream, "Kill him," while chewing dates. The man in the ring? He's terrified. But the guy next to you? He's yelling, "Finish him," while spilling honeyed wine on your lap. You're trying not to cry. He's trying to get a better view. The worst part? They still ask you for tips. Between matches, young recruits shuffle over, eyes wide, saying things like, "You were incredible, sir. How did you survive so many fights?" You want to say, "I didn't. Not really. Luck. Lots of it. Because I killed faster than they did." But instead, you pat them on the shoulder and mutter, "Keep your feet wide." And never trust a net fighter. Then they die anyway. Usually in front of you. Sometimes with their arm still twitching. They invite you to dinners now. Wealthy patrons love retired gladiators. As long as you behave, tell stories, and laugh when they joke about feeding Christians to lions. You sit at the end of the table, gripping your goblet like it's a weapon, smiling while they ask, "So, what was the goriest kill you ever made?" You tell them. They cheer. Inside, something goes quiet. At night, you dream of sand. Not beaches. Arena sand. It clings to your skin. It soaks up blood. It remembers things. You wake up sweating. Alone. The rudist sits by your bed, collecting dust. A symbol of freedom, and everything you can't forget. You used to fight for your life. Now you watch others do it. And every time the crowd chants a name, part of you wonders if they still remember yours. You've been invited to a Roman banquet. That's supposed to be good news. You're told there will be roast goose, honeyed figs, dancers, poets, and enough wine to drown a senator's conscience. You're handed a clean tunic, not even blood-stained, and escorted through polished marble halls by men who call you illustrious and celebrated. And for a second, just 1 second, you think, maybe they see me as more than a weapon now. That's adorable, because the moment you arrive, you're reminded that you're not here to dine. You're here to perform. And this isn't a feast. It's an arena in a toga. It starts subtle. You're seated near the center, close enough to smell the emperor's perfume, but not close enough to count as important. You're introduced as a decorated veteran of the games, and someone claps like you just gave a wedding toast instead of bashing in a skull for applause. A poet stands up and recites a poem about your victories. It's flattering, also completely inaccurate. In his version, you fought a tiger using a silver spear while quoting Virgil. You remember screaming, slipping in your own blood, and throwing sand in its eyes. Still, it rhymed. The crowd loves it. Then comes the wine. The real kind, not the watered-down garbage they feed you at the barracks. You sip once, twice, then realize the cup keeps getting refilled. You haven't eaten in hours. It's not an accident. Halfway through the meal, the host stands and announces, "For tonight's entertainment, we honor Mars, the god of war." Everyone claps. Loudly. You try to hide behind a platter of roast boar. Too late. 2 guards appear. One hands you a gladius. The other gestures toward the courtyard, where a wooden training circle has been decorated with lanterns and surrounded by reclining nobles and wide-eyed children. They call it a demonstration. You know it's blood sport with finger foods. You stagger into the arena, tipsy and exhausted, but trained to perform. Your opponent? Another honored guest. A younger gladiator who still has hope in his eyes and too few scars to be taken seriously. They cheer as you circle each other, pretending it's sport. You both know it's survival. The nobles bet on your deaths between bites of stuffed dormice. Someone toasts your form. A girl giggles when you nearly lose your footing. The emperor winks at you. You swing. You parry. You catch a blade across your shoulder and wince. The other guy blinks. That was his mistake. You finish it fast. Too fast. The crowd is disappointed. They were hoping for a longer show. Your opponent bleeds out at the emperor's feet. Someone claps and calls it graceful. You are handed another goblet of wine and a cold roasted quail. You eat it while your tunic soaks in blood. Not all of it yours. Later, as the moon rises and the banquet winds down, a noble pats you on the back and says, "You were magnificent." You nod, smile, pretend you don't see the next gladiator being brought in. You remember being him once. They'll call him magnificent too. Then forget his name. When you die in the arena, and you will, Rome doesn't weep. Rome cheers, because dying in front of a crowd is the ultimate 5-star performance. One moment you're dodging a trident. The next your spleen is making a surprise appearance in front of 40,000 people. They roar. They chant your name if they remember it. The emperor give a little nod, like your decapitation was an acceptable closing act to his afternoon snack. Then your body's dragged off the sand like yesterday's vomit at a bacchanal. They're not disrespecting you. They're making room for the next guy. Here's how it goes. You're tossed behind the arena where flies hum like a funeral choir and everything smells like iron, rot, and olive oil. A few slaves pull off your armor, maybe sell it. Someone fishes through your pockets. If you had any coins left for the ferryman, they're gone now. Your corpse, which has been stabbed, bludgeoned, burned, and possibly headbutt by a giraffe at some point, is shoved onto a cart like expired meat. You'd think this would be the end. Nope. This is when the glorification begins. Because the same city that reduced your organs to a puddle now needs your death to mean something. So they build a little grave marker, a tiny shrine, maybe even a cheap marble slab that says something like, "Here lies Gaius of Thrace, champion of the arena, defender of honor, slayer of beasts." No mention of the infected wound you'd had for 6 months. No mention of the panic attack before your final match. No mention of the fact that you cried like a toddler when your best friend bled out beside you 2 weeks ago. Nope. To Rome, you died a valiant warrior. Your corpse, meanwhile, says something else. Something closer to, this man was stabbed 18 times, trampled by a horse, had 3 fingers missing, a collapsed lung, and a tibia so cracked it looked like a fortune cookie. Your teeth are broken. Your ribs are soup. Your liver is probably in a souvenir jar by now. The sad part? Kids visit your grave and leave little pebbles in respect. Drunk nobles tell tales about you in bathhouses. Only they embellish it so much you sound like you rode a dragon and bench-pressed a rhino. You become a story, not a person. A symbol, not a man. And that wooden sword you dreamed about, the one that meant freedom, it's buried with you, covered in blood, snapped in half, just like you. They call it the Flavian Amphitheater, but you know it as the Colosseum. A masterpiece of Roman engineering, an architectural marvel, and a gigantic meat blender that never really stops humming. Tourists centuries later will admire its symmetry. Architects will marvel at its acoustics. Poets will write odes about the sunlight hitting the marble just right. But you know the truth. The Colosseum is Rome's grandest graveyard. Only no one's polite enough to bury the bodies. It was built to impress, to intimidate, and most importantly, to distract. A gift to the public. A bread and circuses colossus designed not to elevate the people, but to remind them, this is Rome. You are entertained. You are ruled. You are disposable. And the labor force that carved it into being? Slaves, prisoners, starving artisans who got paid in crusts and threats. In other words, people just like you. Even before you ever fought in the arena, the Colosseum was already crushing souls. Men died building the hypogeum, that underground labyrinth of cages, pulleys, and platforms designed to launch lions, bears, and unlucky men into sunlight like living party favors. The elevators groaned like gods in pain. The trapdoors swallowed people whole. And if the sand looked clean on fight day, that's because it was freshly poured to cover the last guy's blood. They even used red ochre sand sometimes, not for aesthetic, just to save the janitors the hassle of pretending blood didn't soak through white. The seats? Tiered like a wedding cake of inequality. At the top, nobles, senators, foreign dignitaries eating olives and laughing like your limbs weren't at risk. At the bottom, poor Roman citizens sweating and screaming for violence because it was the only moment they felt power. And in the center, you, half naked, starving, oiled like a turkey, facing down a man you used to share soup with. Every round of applause was a shovel full of dirt on your dignity. Every cheer was a nail in someone's coffin. The crowd didn't come to watch you win. They came to watch someone lose. And if you happened to win, enough times, maybe you got a shrine, maybe a small statue in the corridor behind the vomitorium. Maybe your name scrawled in chalk and quickly forgotten. Maybe, if you were truly lucky, some greasy patron would commission a festival in your honor after your death, where other gladiators would die celebrating your legacy. But mostly, the Colosseum forgets. It forgets your name, your pain, your broken fingers, your shaking knees. It only remembers the blood. It only honors the architecture. It's been centuries since you bled on that sand. The crowd is gone. The emperors are dust. The lions are long dead, and the only things stalking the Colosseum now are tour guides with selfie sticks and broken Latin. And yet, here you are, still a footnote in someone's dissertation. Your death? It's a topic on an academic panel. Your name? Misspelled in the subtitles of a documentary narrated by a British man who sounds vaguely impressed by the efficiency of your execution. They call it sport. They call it spectacle. They call it the height of Roman entertainment. They call it history. They forget the part where you vomited before every match, where you clutched your wooden practice sword like it was a holy relic and whispered to whatever gods would listen, even though you stopped believing 2 skull fractures ago. They forget that training often meant malnutrition, infection, and getting kicked awake by a man who considered compassion a sign of weakness. They forget your teeth weren't knocked out for strategy. They were just in the way of someone's lunch entertainment. And now, there are classrooms debating your valor. College students write papers on gladiatorial ethics. There are board games, novelty mugs, cheap Halloween costumes with foam swords and plastic abs. They turn your torment into theme park gift shop history. Some museum displays your armor like it wasn't scrubbed of dried blood and brain matter just to be reused for the next poor bastard. And still, they admire it. They call you iconic. They call the Colosseum majestic. They marvel at the discipline and pageantry and courage of the arena. But what they should say is this: you were enslaved. You were brutalized. You were fed to beasts so people could forget they were bored. You didn't fight for glory. You fought because it was that, or get stabbed for trying to run. You are remembered now in plaques, in podcasts, in dusty museum corners labeled entertainment in ancient Rome. But not as a man, as a metaphor, a curiosity, a conversation starter over wine. No one reads the part where you cried the night before your last match, or how your last thought wasn't glory. It was, I hope it's fast. So yes, centuries later, they call it sport. They call it a window into Rome's grandeur. They forget it was a meat grinder with cheering. You were not a hero. You were bait. But maybe, just maybe, someone will watch this or read this and understand that what they call history was your nightmare. If you've ever had your pain turned into someone else's entertainment, like, subscribe, and drop a comment. What part of your story has the world tried to polish into something inspirational? And if you're still listening, you made it. Through blood, through dust, through 30 nights of screams and sand. Now dim the lights. Rest your eyes. We've got more history waiting. And the next one's even worse.